Okay, thank you everybody for coming to class tonight. This is Design 481 and 344A and B, and we are conducting our first of the semester design online lecture series, and our guest tonight is Renee Meyer Ernst. I have known Renee for a long time. She is a terrific graphic designer. She does a lot with entrepreneurship, and she has her own business that she runs and sells design work and design products. She's also a great design researcher. So tonight she's going to talk to us about one of her really special projects that she's been working on actually for a few years, it seems like. And she's going to show you how she did the branding and the online marketing and UX for this product. So Renee, go ahead and tell us a little bit about yourself and then go right ahead.
Sure, okay. Well, welcome. Thanks for tuning in. I'm Renee Meyer Ernst. I'm an associate professor of art at St. Ambrose University in Iowa. I teach primarily a wide variety of graphic design classes, publication design, branding and identity, web design, interaction design, digital photography, a little bit of everything. And let me get started here. Let's see. I'm going to share my screen. Okay, I think this is what I do. Okay. What are you guys seeing on your side?
I'm just seeing your Zoom website.
Let's see. Okay, are you guys seeing the presentation? Okay, this is my first time using Zoom, so, all right. So, what I'm gonna talk to you guys about today is a project that I didn't really know I was going to do. It kind of just happened organically. It was something that I created out of a response to a lot of experiences that not only I have had, but that a lot of other people have had. And so in order to kind of get a really good solid background about where this project came from, it's called the Adoption Heart Project. I have to tell you a little bit about myself, okay? So I am originally adopted from South Korea. That's me right there, all right? So that was my Korean name, Ha Mi-ye. Ha's actually the last name. Korean people put their surname first. And I was adopted at about 3 months old and grew up in a super tiny town of Denver, Iowa. Yes, there is more than one Denver in the United States. This one has maybe 2,000 people in it. And it's not exactly the most diverse place in the world. I mean, so I basically was the diversity in town, we'll put it that way, okay? So I'd always grown up, I think, in a very unique situation, being interracially and interculturally adopted. But the good news about my experience is that my parents really wanted me to have a connection with my culture and for me to meet other people who were in my same situation. So I grew up going to a Korean culture camp. Okay, this is organized by Iowans for International Adoption. And I went there ever since the beginning of the camp starting. And then I worked my way up to being an intern, and then a counselor, and then the camp director, and then I landed on the Iowans for International Adoption board. So you know, I'm not only an adoptee, but I've been really engaged with the adoption culture. At this camp, the majority of adoptees there are from Korea, but we also had them from China, Ethiopia, Vietnam, and a few other places. And the really great thing about this camp is it's not just for the kids, their parents and their siblings and, you know, everyone else, they're also in attendance here. So, you know, it builds a really great network of support. It's a place where you can go there and you don't have to explain yourself. I think one thing that adoptees get really good at doing is storytelling. And I find that that's like an ongoing theme with a lot of my work. I present my work and I explain it through stories. So that's kind of what you're getting here right now. Now, even though I had this really great community to network with, you know, you are in an environment and you're in a culture where you know that you don't really quite fit in a single place, right? So like, I was born in Korea, I'm Korean, I don't talk Korean, I can barely read Korean, and if I can read it, I can't necessarily tell you what it means. So there's like all these expectations that people think of me because of how I appear, and it turns out to be like the exact opposite, right? So I grow up American, but yet, you know, people look at me and they just assume like, oh, you know, like, where are you from? And I'm like, Denver, Iowa. And they're like, no, like, where are you from? Like, I'm gonna, you know, like, and I'm like, well, I was born in Busan, South Korea. And you have to be specific about whether it's North or South, but, you know, nobody comes out of North Korea, all right? So, you know, when I got into college, I did my undergraduate at University of Northern Iowa. It was sort of the first place where I could really explore who I was as a person, as an individual, and explore artistically how I was different from everyone else. So, like, when you grow up in a super small town like Denver, Iowa, everyone already knows you. They already know that, like, I'm the adopted kid. My English is fluent. So really, like, what else is there to ask about this person, right? But you go move into college and not everyone knows you anymore. So I found that I had to explain myself a lot. And it was through a variety of art projects that I started exploring my culture and what it meant to create an identity for myself. And after I had ended up in my first graphic design class, I totally fell in love with the discipline. Okay, like, I always knew I was going to be an artist or in some kind of creative field. But there was something about graphic design that I was really attracted to. And I think what it is that because I have struggled my whole life kind of creating an identity, I got a lot of satisfaction by being able to do it for other people, right? Like, that's what a graphic designer does. You come to a designer with like an ambiguous idea or a concept that's not tangible. You can't see anything yet, you can't feel anything, and that's when you come to a designer. And, you know, logo design is something that I totally fell in love with, okay? I love logo design and branding. It literally gives me personal satisfaction to do this kind of thing, okay? I think that when you end up in any sort of more commercial field, especially anything that deals with technology, you can sell out really easily, right? And that can become really apparent, not just in the type of things that you're making, but in the way that you're interacting with someone. So what you need to do as, you know, any kind of designer, whether you're a UX designer, print designer, game designer, you need to separate yourself from everyone else. Find what it is that you're passionate about. What do you want to do as this creative person to change the world, okay? And that story is going to be different from everyone else, but I think it's really obvious in the difference between a person who has that kind of motivation and that passion and the type of person who doesn't, okay? So, you know, I'm getting into all these like logo designs and temporary identities. So like sometimes these things are for events, sometimes they're for small businesses, sometimes they're for organizations that, you know, I'm already familiar with. And I'm teaching and I'm giving talks about being a Korean adoptee, and I'm creating some like this digital collage, fine artwork and stuff about my experiences as an adoptee. And, you know, then like life gets really busy. It kind of fell to the wayside a little bit. Then we had our past presidential election, and the climate started to change. Okay, I'm not going to get like all political on people, but I'm just, sharing kind of things that I have observed. And around that same time, news stories started to pop up about Korean adoptees who were being deported because they had never obtained citizenship and they didn't know it. Okay, some of you might have heard about this. It's been on NPR. There's been a documentary made about him. This is Adam Krasper. He is a Korean adoptee. He was adopted at, I think he was like 3 years old. His parents had told him that he was a citizen. So like, when you grow up here, you don't know any better. You just assume that you're a citizen, right? Well, he had a really rough childhood. Unfortunately, this was a rare case where he was not placed in a very good home. He suffered a lot of abuse. And he had a bit of a criminal record. It was for burglary, but he says that he was just trying to break into his house to get his own things because he was kicked out. And after he had learned that he didn't have citizenship, he applied for a green card so that he could become one. Well, they realized, that he had a criminal history, and the government decided that this was an opportunity to deport him, okay? The Korean adoption community got really upset. I mean, people were following this story every single day, waiting for updates. Understand that Adam is married, he has kids, and I don't know how they came to this conclusion, but in the end they decided to deport him. So he is currently in South Korea. This is devastating because they flew him back to a country where he does not speak the language. He knows nothing about the culture. He had not been back to Korea since, he was adopted to the United States. And so psychologically, that does an awful lot to a person. Another adoptee in a very similar situation is, or was, I should say, Philip Clay, okay? He was also adopted by an American family. They had never actually gotten him citizenship. I'm not sure why. I have a feeling that maybe like the adoption agencies weren't very clear about like getting your child naturalized after they are adopted and arrived in the United States. But he also kind of had a rough upbringing and a criminal record, and he tried to, then he found out that he wasn't a citizen. The government also found out. They deported him back to Korea, and for him, it didn't turn out so well, okay? A lot of identity crisis issues. He could barely find a job, right, because he could barely speak the language, and it's gotten a lot better, but there's still a little bit of a stigma in Korea about adoptees. Like, bloodlines are really important culturally there. So if you're kind of like a kid that's like born out of wedlock, or, like you grew up not knowing how to speak Korean or knowing anything about the Korean culture, some people would just like spite you basically. And unfortunately, he committed suicide. And didn't make it. So this has really prompted a lot of reaction from our culture, from our Korean adoptee culture here in the States. And, so I'm reading like more and more of these stories, and I'm just getting so upset, it literally just shakes me right to the bone of like, how could they do this? These people never would have known. Like, how were they supposed to know? And then, it gets really real when I go to check my email, and I get this from Holt International Adoption. This is a little screenshot of my inbox. And I was adopted through Holt International. And it's reminding us to check our immigrant status, and to check like where to go to look for our naturalization forms and things like that. Luckily, I do know like that I was naturalized. Like, we've got photos of it. The paperwork is there. But not everyone is so lucky. So I kind of like was just overcome by the whole situation, I guess. And so like initially I think what our natural human reaction to do is kind of like freak out a little bit, right? Like, oh my gosh, is this really happening? Why is this happening? And then you sort of have this moment of like, okay, let's calm down here and focus. All right, let's take a deep breath. And let's do something about this, Renee. Like, you have been involved in the Korean adoption community for this long. You've been talking about it the majority of your adult life. So let's do something more, okay? So I started doing some research. I was like, I think I'm gonna make something that could promote the adoption culture. I wanted to create something that wasn't preachy, you know, that wasn't political, just something that was approachable, something that could kind of open up a conversation between people. Because I think what happened in Adam's situation and Philip's situation is that people just don't know what really goes on. And so if people don't know, it's up to other people to inform them. So before I actually went into the design process of making this adoption heart mark, I was curious to know, like, you know, what really is out there in terms of like adoption and design pieces. So like I did tons of Google image searches and I kept finding things like this, okay? Where first of all, the majority of the image results had to do with pets. I love pets. I've got 4 of them. You know, go adopting pets, right? But I'm like, okay, I'm not an animal. I'm a person. And also you'll notice that in some of these results, first of all, they're choosing like these horrible fonts. Like the one in Comic Sans there kind of makes my retinas bleed. Some of them are really political, like the one that's like on the right side there that says abortion and then like the B and the R crossed out and it goes to adoption. And like, you know, so some of them I think they start to get controversial or really political. And I just didn't want to go there. Like I wanted to create something that had a really positive connotation. I did find a few marks that I thought were interesting, or at least looked better than the rest of what I was finding. And it's this one. There's, I didn't really know it actually until just last year, which is that there is an international adoption symbol. It is a triangle wrapped within the borders of a heart. And the triangle is supposed to stand for 3 things: the adoptee, the birth parents, and the adoptive family, okay? The other decent mark that I found was from adoption.com. You know, there's a nice sense of unity to it. I liked the simplicity. It was clean. It was really straightforward. And I also stumbled across this. This is Ben Stafford, and I'm going to touch base with him because he is actually an illustrator and a graphic designer. And the way that I found his work actually was after I had come up with my adoption heart mark, I started hashtagging it adoption heart. And then I clicked on my hashtag just to see what would show up, and his work came up. And I guess he and his wife had adopted a child, and so he created this design. And the idea here is that the small heart on the top is merging into the larger heart to kind of show unity and that process of family integration. And so he actually has t-shirts and everything that he sells. Okay. So I kind of stood back then and I looked at these and I thought, well, what is it about these that made them stand out a little bit better than the rest? Okay. Well, the first one is that the objects that are in there are recognizable. Okay, we can clearly see hearts. If there's text in there, it's also really clear. It's a nice kind of heavyweight sans serif typeface, meaning that there aren't like all those little feet on it like Times New Roman or something. It's not like a really obnoxious script font. It's going to look good in a variety of different sizes, whether it's like blown up on a bulletin board, or whether it's like a little small, like little social media icon. The other thing is that there has a limited color. There's a limited color palette, right? So each one of these that you're seeing here is using either 1 or 2 colors. And above anything else, they're simple. And if you think about like, so one of the things that I do in my branding and identity class on the first day is I'll hand out a gridded worksheet to my students. And in the upper left-hand corner is the name of a company or a brand. So like Target, Nike, Starbucks. And I will time them. I'll give them 10 minutes to do the best that they can to recreate their logo to the best of their ability, okay? And in the end, we come together and we compare that gridded sheet to see which businesses always have the mark, you know, like people could remember them almost instantly. And the ones that people couldn't, they either couldn't remember it at all, or they could only remember parts of it. And the ones that were most memorable, right, like Nike, McDonald's, Target, they were all really simple and they shared these same 3 elements. So when I was going in to create my own design, I knew that I had to do a lot of the same thing. And, you know, usually I always start out my branding and logo designs with sketches. With this particular project, literally, like, I was having this emotional reaction. Like, I was getting into my research, and then I was like, okay, I'm just going to jump right into this. So I opened up Illustrator, Adobe Illustrator, and I played around with a lot of different words, and I started off actually making symbols because I'm just really interested in symbology and icons and things like that. But then I decided, you know, if I want to go for clarity here, maybe I should just keep it simple and make this a word mark. So I typed out the word adoption. I tried a variety of different fonts, right? So I really love like Adobe Caslon and Garamond and you know, Didot and fonts like that. But just because you like something doesn't always mean that it's appropriate to use in a certain situation, because they looked too conservative to me, okay? And I wanted something that looked contemporary, that had a lot of visual impact as well. So therefore I knew I needed to go with a heavier font. I tried Futura, and I went through, like, you know, heavy and bold and all of that, but Futura, if you guys, you know, like scroll through that list of fonts when you're doing like your Word documents or if you're in Photoshop or whatever, it's really mechanical and super geometric, right? And so it just looked a little too cold to me. And finally I got to Avenir. Avenir is kind of what we call a humanist sans serif font, in that there aren't those little serifs, little teeth on there, or their little feet like Times New Roman has. But it also, like, it's not totally like perfectly geometric in shape. There's kind of like the indication that the human hand was in it. There's some kind of like soft curves to it. And there was a really heavyweight version of it as well. So I knew it would have a lot of impact. So I finally ended up with this. And it still even took some tweaking after I had that font, right? Like, I could have just typed it in, you know, turned it into outlines into a vector object and be like, okay, done. But I wanted to really think about this idea of what says community and what says connection. So what I did is I kerned all the letter forms together. Kern is like a fancy design word for adjusting the spacing in between the letters. And I kerned them all the way until they were touching each other to kind of reiterate that idea of connectivity. And I also noticed that, you know, like, when you look at the letter forms in that word adoption, you kind of see a little person in that I, and the crossbar of that T, it kind of looks like an arm, as if they're kind of like reaching out or supporting one another. And I hadn't had the heart in there right away, but I thought it needed just a little punch of color to make it stand out more and to give it some more contrast. So I saw the O's in there and I was like, well, that would be a really great opportunity to put a recognizable icon from the adoption culture, something that's already out there. So I went with the heart. I played with the idea of putting that heart in the first O in adoption, but it looked a little it just wasn't quite right. Like, some of this is based on intuition. So I moved it over to what would be our right when you're looking at it. But I also then noticed too that it would be, if you turn around and if you're that little person, that little I letter form there, that would be on the left side, which is the same side as your chest, right? So I kept it there, and I decided that I really liked it. I was like, this is it. And I knew that I wanted to turn this, I started out with turning it into prints. So I made some like 8x10 prints and like a really long banner. I've got one hanging up in my house. But I also knew I wanted to get this to a variety of different people, like something where you don't necessarily have to be like stuck in someone's home before you see it. So I decided to make stickers. All right, so these are the stickers that I had created. I actually ordered them through Sticker Mule. They have really great quality products. These stickers are weatherproof, like they feel really good in your hands. You can feel the quality come through with that. So everything from like the concept to the design to the production, all of this is something that I wanted to be really high quality. So I had tried a couple of other places to order stickers beforehand, but for me, this was the place to go. And so I was like, okay, I've got these stickers, I've got these prints, now I need to start selling them. So the first place I went was Facebook, right? Like word of mouth is one of the, I would say like the best place to start when you're trying to launch any sort of business or a campaign or an idea. So let's see if I can get through here again. So I had the image of the sticker. I had these images of prints, and pretty soon people started wanting them. So I was like, oh crap, I need to now find a way to get them to people, and so that they can do transactions, because the people who were wanting them, at first they didn't live very near Davenport. So I opened an Etsy shop. I am thinking about maybe integrating this into a standalone Adoption Heart like website / blog as soon as more workshops and like other events start to get rolling here pretty soon. That's sort of like where this project's going to go next. But so I set up an Etsy shop, and it's been really successful. At first, it was really slow. The first people to order from me from there were people that I knew. I think about like the first 3 or 4 orders, okay? And then it just kind of sat there for a while, and I was like, well, how can I get this out? Like, I was looking at other Etsy stores, and I'm like, man, some of these people have like, you know, thousands of followers and all this kind of thing. So I did more research into SEO, search engine optimization, and it turns out that Etsy's SEO doesn't function the same way that like Google search works. It's really odd. But after I figured that out, I started to get more hits on my shop. So there's an app that I have, you know, on my phone. Look, I've even got my little adoption sticker on here. That like tells me like when someone hits my shop, when someone favorites something, when they decide to follow my shop. And so right now, like, I haven't made that many sales numerically, but I've had a lot of traffic of people like bookmarking my shop or favoriting an item. And also, like, when people are placing orders, a lot of them are ordering more than one thing. So, you know, I've been able to sell, you know, like $300 to $400 worth of stuff. And the thing is, like, after I figured out that search engine optimization stuff, I kid you not, every single order that I had after those first few orders of people that I knew, I have absolutely no idea who they are. And so that was like really exciting, right? Like, so I'm not necessarily relying on like my friends and family being the only ones buying this stuff from me. Okay. Something else that I wanted to include on there was what's going to happen with the proceeds of this. 'Cause like, I don't want people to think that I am sort of taking advantage of an otherwise very vulnerable situation for some people. Like, I don't want to do this project about adoption and then just pocket all the money and keep it to myself, okay? So what happens when someone buys an Adoption Heart product is that some of it goes back toward production costs, but then the other part of it, I set aside for some adoption-based projects that I have lined up, and actually they're coming into fruition here pretty soon. So I'm talking about things like travel for lectures. So a lot of people have asked me to, you know, come speak to their social services group or whatever, but they have like no money, right? Like zero budget. A lot of these organizations hardly have any budget at all. So I just drive there and I do it for free. I also use portions of it I would like to sponsor an event with kids. I do have a connection with Lutheran Social Services of Illinois, so I'm working to maybe coordinate like, I don't know, like an ice cream social or like a kids arts and crafts day or whatever, specifically for adoptees and their families. Other things would be like I have another line, a completely different line of work that I do that's related to my adoption story. That's digital collages. I'm going to have one show going up in the Bettendorf Library and then another one in the Morrissey Gallery here in Davenport pretty soon. And that stuff is like really expensive. I do not work for a Research One institute, okay? I am at a small private nonprofit university, meaning that they don't have a whole lot of money to fork out. It's really expensive to print and frame this stuff. So I also put some of those funds toward producing those things so that I can show them and again, talk about what they are and help inform people about the adoption culture and where I come from and how the work is created. So I put that little mission statement kind of on there to say like what this goes toward, and then they can also read a short bio about me and my seller profile so that they know that, you know, I'm not just some kind of like crazy eBay scam or something. Okay, so I got the Etsy shop up there, and then it's like, well, maybe besides search engine optimization, I need to do something else. And the way that more and more companies are functioning now these days is through social media. Okay, so I have a public Instagram account. If you just search for Renee Meyer Ernst, you'll find me, and you can follow me there. And so I started taking pictures of the things that I was selling. And the thing with this is you have to do it more than once. It's an ongoing thing, and this brand is something that you basically have to live all the time, every day. And what I mean by that is you have to be ready to innovate, and you have to be ready to kind of be like on your toes. So when I say innovate, I mean like don't show the same image over and over and over again. So on this slide, you can see like I'm showing the same product, but it's in like 4 completely different contexts. These photographs are taken in my home. You can see the counter, my, you know, standard family oak counter table like underneath of what I'm about ready to ship out. You know, I went outside, you can see my puppy, you know, there in the background. So like to show people like this is a small, very small one-person business right now. And you're, you know, really trying to help support a really good cause. Okay. The other thing is that like once you make a sale, you have to keep maintaining the quality of your brand through its appearance, and that includes through the mail and after they receive your product. So in this particular case, this person ordered a Happy Gotcha Day print. So, you know, a gotcha day is a pretty popular term that is used in the adoptee culture, and it's the day that your adoptive family got you, that you came home. And so I would send the print, and of course it's like put in like a nice plastic sleeve and everything to protect it from scratching. I print all of these in-house from my studio. And then, you know, everyone gets a personalized thank you note that I write by hand. So what's nice about Etsy is that like they'll tell you like how many they want of what product, and you can also see obviously who you're supposed to be sending it to. So I'll look at the name and I'll address them. I'll be like, you know, hi Sharon, thank you so much for supporting this project. I hope you enjoy this print. And you know, and then I'll sign it with my name. I'll also throw in like a little freebie, so you can see like there's a little miniature adoption heart sticker. It's the same one that I have on the back of my phone. And then a business card, so that like if someone comes to their house or whatever and sees it, they're like, where'd you get that? And they can be like, well, hold on a second, I've got this business card, I'll give it to you, and it'll point you to the Etsy shop. Okay, so again, it's that whole idea of word of mouth. Okay. The other thing that I had mentioned just a little while ago was about always being prepared. And actually not too long ago, and Deb, I think you probably saw my Facebook post on this, I was getting into my car from Target. I was out with a friend and we were getting in my car. I was pulling out of the parking space. And just as I was ready to put it back and drive and leave, this lady like that had parked right next to me flagged me down, you know, and she was like, wait, wait, wait. And so I rolled my window down and it's like, you know, is she crazy? Like, what's going on here? And it turns out that she was wondering where I got my sticker from. So I keep one of these stickers on the side of my car. This is a smaller 5-inch sticker. And then I also keep one on the back on my bumper. This is the 8-inch version. They're also removable, by the way. Like, I take everything into consideration. Like, if somebody puts this on something, and let's say they're going to sell their car later, or they need to like return their laptop because they work at a university that technically owns it, that it's going to come off without like just giving everyone a migraine, okay? And so what happened that day was what I had hoped would happen eventually, which is that someone would see it and ask me like where I got it from. And she actually she was an adoptive parent. She had her daughter there with her. She was totally beautiful. She was adorable. And she ended up ordering 2 stickers from me. And then I also told her about this lecture that was coming up later on this month at the Bettendorf Library, and she sounded like she'd be really interested in it. She used to be a teacher and is now a stay-at-home mom, so she's got some time. And it was just a really great connection, right? Like, perfect stranger. I had no idea who she was. And yet, like, immediately we found this like really natural connection. Okay, so I've really been expanding on this brand from there. Try not to get overwhelmed, okay? But it's one of those things where, like, once you come up with an idea and you have a solid brand down, just run with it, okay? So yes, it started out with that word adoption, but I thought, how can I make this more interesting? Because if you set up an Etsy shop, one of the things that it said was, you know, your shop tends to get a little bit more traffic, or it gets more attention if you have 10 or more items on it. So I was like, all right, well, there's only so many different ways that I could spin that one word. And that's where I started to come up with the like Happy Gotcha Day, Forever Family, Welcome Home. And the nice thing about those other designs is that you don't necessarily have to be adopted or have to be an adoptee family in order to buy something from here, right? So you've got these more universal ones like motherhood, you know, welcome home, dad, thank you. Some of these are a lot newer. The daycare one is new. The foster care one is new. I've already also started designing some marks in celebration of holidays. So like Happy Mother's Day, International Women's Day, holidays that relate to a lot of people, a very wide audience, but that also touch the adoption culture. Okay, and I do have one there for the pet lovers. If you look there on like the 4th row and the 3rd column down, I've got an adoption heart there with a paw in the middle. So, you know, I don't know, people love their pets, right? Okay, so that's pretty much where I'm at right now. But you know, there's one other thing recently that hit, and that's the hurricane, right? That is hitting Texas like again. It's displaced like tens of thousands of people. People have died, people have lost homes. And I think that with adoption, but also with just life in general, one thing that we can all relate to is that sense of loss and feeling displaced or like we've lost something. So in those circumstances, I think we all need to come together. So I created this mark for Houston, and this is just last night, okay? And so I'm going to come up with some kind of fundraiser for it. I'm not exactly sure what it's going to be. I am just going to donate the production cost of whatever it is that I decide to sell, and then 100% of those proceeds are going to go to the Red Cross to help out the people in Houston there. Because, you know, like I said, this project started out with an adoption theme, but in the end, it's just about connectivity. You know, we're all in this life together, okay, at the same time. And it's only going to get better if we're there to support each other. So that is kind of what I have for you today. And also on the very, very last slide, I have a list of resources there for you guys to check out if you do really start to get interested in branding and identity. If you want to check out my Etsy shop, you can, or if you just want to look at things that I've posted on Instagram or Twitter, just look up #AdoptionHeart. You'll see a lot of different things come up there. I guess there was like a conference that was held called Adoption Heart. And otherwise, you can reach me at any of the other places that you see on the slide. So if anyone has any questions, let me know.
Great. Thank you, Renee. That was awesome. I loved hearing about that.
Okay.
Any of the students who are online can ask questions at this time. I can either call on you, or if somebody would like to go ahead, please unmute your mic and go ahead and ask Renee.
Can you guys see me again? Am I showing up?
I can see you, and I can see the rest across the top. Okay. What I can also do is maybe ask each student, just kind of go down the line as I have you on screen here. Nicole, did you have a question tonight for Renee?
Deb, I think I lost your sound. I'm not sure if that's on your end or mine.
Hold on. There.
Oh, okay, there you are. Yep.
Sorry. Okay. I'm just blathering on. Okay, let's go back here. Nicole, did you have a question for Renee?
I guess if in finding how to like market your new brands and stuff, where did you research more for different ways of getting it out?
Somewhat. I think it was more of just paying attention to how people were spreading the word about their brand. So like, I mean, I'm a social media person, okay? So I knew that was just one of the main ways that companies and brands were kind of marketing to people, or at least reaching out. And the nice thing, about hashtags, right, is, if you use them and use them strategically. So like when I post something and I hashtag it Adoption Heart, I'm also following it with other keywords like adoption, family, love, things that the target audience that I'm trying to grab their attention from would be looking for, like when they're bored, sitting in the doctor's office in the waiting room or whatever, that would then show up, right? And I also made sure that my Instagram account was public, because otherwise if it's set to private, not like the only people who are going to be able to find your stuff are the people who are already following you. And actually, Etsy's store, like if you look in the dashboard area, it'll tell you where people are clicking to your shop from. And a lot of them are coming from social media. And I suspect that probably actually a lot of them are coming from Instagram, because I have my shop link in there. And I reach a lot more strangers actually on Instagram than I do on Twitter or Facebook for whatever reason. But yeah, it's just like literally that's the entire way that I have launched this project is just online.
Wow, nice. Great, thanks. Diana, do you have a question tonight?
I don't think I do right now. Thank you, though.
Okay, great. Let's see, Yuli, do you have a question?
Hi. I was just wondering, we all, I think a lot of us here are graduating in May. So I kind of want to go back to maybe when you were in college and something that you would advise us to do now to get, a jump start on our careers.
this sounds kind of like crystal ball like, but the thing that I would tell you to do is set a goal. Like I know you guys are about ready to graduate college. That's a huge step. And by the way, congratulations. But where do you want to be in the next 5 to 10 years? Because I think once you answer that question, you're going to know what to do in the next 3 months, right? I didn't just, like fall into a professorship because I decided it at the last minute, coming out of undergrad. I had made that decision while I was still in undergrad. And so it's something where, and whatever that goal is, it's going to be different for everyone. And there's always a different way to navigate it. You're going to run into hurdles, a lot of them, okay? And some of the ones that you have to jump are pretty high. I mean, when you're a young undergrad going into graduate school and then a young graduate coming out and trying to get a professorship, it's hard, right? Like you want people to take you seriously. So that's one thing, but you also have to like really just go above and beyond. So, obviously I didn't have, like 20 years of industry experience under my belt, for instance, by the time that I came out of graduate school. But while I was in school, I was working in-house at the University of Northern Iowa's Marketing and Public Relations Department, and I have always been freelancing ever since undergrad, okay? So you've got to hustle. If you're going to make it out there, you just have to do everything and then some. You got to put in like 200%, and you have to love it. If you don't love it, you're going to end up hating what you're doing. Deb's like, yeah. Yes, I agree. So I don't know if that helps if you're looking maybe for something a little more specific.
No, that's great. That was a great answer. Thank you.
Thank you. How about a question from Miro Chin? Okay. Derek, do you have a question tonight that you'd like to ask?
Can you guys see me?
Yes.
Okay. Just out of curiosity, because I've tried doing logos before, and it always kind of arrives at the point where you need to like simplify things for things to be really memorable. How long was that process for you?
Gosh, I'll tell you, the time always varies depending on the mark and depending on what I'm designing for. I would say for the Adoption Heart one, it probably took me altogether probably around 10 hours split up over a few days. Like I would start experimenting, and then like I have a 4-year-old and she's crazy and she's all over the place. So like I get interrupted by that, or like a student sends me an email, so I've got to reply to that, or then I've got to go teach a class and go to a department meeting. So it took some refinement, and like I wouldn't always just be staring at the screen either. Like it makes a difference between seeing it on the screen and then actually physically printing it out on paper. I printed it out large. I shrank it down to 1 inch, right? So I could make sure that I could still see it on a very small scale, and then made some adjustments that way. So it was a back and forth process. I would say in the grand scheme of things, that is a really fast logo design process. But again, it was for something that I was personally reacting to that was going to be developed by me, but still for, other people.
Mm-hmm.
So I think one of the ways that if you haven't simplified enough is, number one, like if you're using like 1 billion and one colors. Number two, if you shrink it down and you can't see it very well, something needs to change, and it's usually that something needs to be removed, or the scale of something needs to be changed, or maybe you've got too many different symbols in there, or maybe your symbol's too big and your type is too small. So sometimes by just altering the proportion of elements, it can make a really big difference.
Perfect.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Karen, I see you have a question there. Do you want to ask that question or other questions?
Yes. Hi.
So
Hi.
I just checked your Instagram account, but it looks like a personal account to me. Have you thought about making it like a business account? So in the story, you can actually do a swipe up thing and put your Etsy link in the story, so people can actually like just go there directly.
Yes, that's it. That is actually something that I'm looking at. I don't want to make my name account a business account, if that makes sense. I would probably make a separate Adoption Heart Instagram account. Like I said, I just started this project. I rolled it out in November last year, and so I put it out there, and I literally, my life basically exploded. It got really busy, and it just sat there, but it just kept growing and growing in popularity. So now I am at that point where I'm like, okay, people like what they see and they want more. I'm getting a lot of support. So yeah, that is something that I've looked into.
Yeah, because I have a business Instagram account too, and I sell stuff on Etsy too. The thing about making your Instagram as a business account is you can actually see your followers' ages.
Really?
What city they're from, and then what hours of the day they're more active. And then once your account gets, I think once you set it into a business account, your content are more likely to be on the Explore page, where more people can see the stuff that you post. And I think that really helps with the your Etsy shop and the whole project. It spreads more.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Great. Thanks for the information.
Yeah, I just wanna, because I've been selling stuff on Etsy since all over the summer, and I've had a lot of sales.
Great.
Because I sell.
What is it that you sell?
A kid's toy. It's. Have you heard of slimes?
Yeah, I know what you mean.
Yeah, I
you
sell,
make that?
Yeah, I make one with one of my classmates. We started the whole business together, and our Instagram account actually have almost 100,000 followers.
Wow.
Oh my god, that's a lot of slime.
Yeah, actually, people like to a lot of kids, they buy slimes.
They love that.
Yeah. That's how I get into the whole social media and then link with all the Etsy selling stuff.
Wow, great.
Yeah,
that's awesome.
You
a lot of borax and glue.
Yeah. Right? I have tons of glues in my garage.
That's hilarious.
Yeah.
Great. Okay, let's go to Lorraine. Would you like to ask a question?
Yeah, is my mic working?
Yes.
Cool. I wasn't sure if it was going to work. Well, I see that you started with the adoption, and you kind of taken it in so many different directions to apply to, a whole wide audience. Have you had as much success with, each branch, or is the adoption just more successful?
Right now, I don't have very many other prints listed right now because currently I'm out of stock. I have to start reprinting, because when someone orders something from me, I like to have it just right away ready to go. So I'm going to do that first before I start posting them. I've sold probably almost equally the same amount of stickers as I have prints. Probably the stickers sell a little bit better, the 8-inch size especially.
But you're only selling adoption stickers? You're only selling the, okay. Okay. I was just interested to see if you get everyone on board, if you start really kind of branching out to all the different the pet adoption,
and some of that restraint also has to do with the financial situation, right? I literally just out of pocket everything. So I have got, the good news is I've gotten to the point where I've broken even and made a little bit of a profit, and so now I can start doing these workshops. Yeah, doing these workshops and showing my work. For as much as I want to promote this stuff online, my ultimate goal though is to meet people in person. And so I'm probably going to be starting out a lot in the Midwest. There's actually a huge adoption culture in the Minnesota, Minneapolis area. a lot of adoptees, particularly Korean adoptees in Minnesota, Wisconsin, Illinois, and Iowa. And then kind of just seeing where it goes, right? Like sort of like anything else in life. You start something, you see where it takes you,
Right.
and you just enjoy the ride.
That's great.
All right, thank you. Crystal, would you like to ask a question tonight? Okay.
Sorry, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, yeah. You actually already answered both of my questions I had.
Okay.
That's awesome.
So, yeah, I have a question as of now.
Okay, good. All right, great. Let's see. How about, I have just the names in the boxes here. Bex?
I'm good. You guys pretty much cover everything. Thank
Okay.
you so much.
Great. Sapida? Do you have a question tonight? All right. Anybody else? Is there anybody that I missed? I'm trying to go through the students who are online right now. So anybody who has a question, please go ahead and feel free to ask. Anybody? Any final questions for Renee? Renee, would you like to tell us something before we close our meeting tonight?
Oh my goodness. Well, I guess just thanks for listening. If there's ever a question that you guys have later on, feel free to email me or tweet at me, or whatever way that you prefer to get in contact with people. I'm on like just about any form of social media. I hope that maybe you learned something. I think maybe the biggest thing to take away from this with any sort of brand is that I think when people say the word brand, they think a lot about like commercialization and like mass production. And while it's true that those things can be related to it, a brand is really about a culture. It's about building a community. And it's about passion. Okay. So whatever it is that you're doing, whatever you're going to do when you graduate, in the next 5 to 10 years, make sure it's something that you really love. And, that's, going to help enrich the world we live in, right? Because it's all anyone can do.
That's great. Renee, you have been very, very interesting to listen to, and the brand and the whole inspiration is so interesting, and I think it really shows the power of design, and what you've been able to do is something you really, really cared about. And like I said, I know you've cared about this for years.
Yeah.
So just now seeing this blossom is terrific. I am going to encourage the students, if they want to follow you on one of the social media or LinkedIn, that you would be a great person to be connected and following.
Sure.
And otherwise, any other questions, you guys, before we close our meeting? I think we're good. Thank you very much, Renee. You have a great night.
Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
All right. Thanks, everybody. We'll see you.
Bye.
Bye.